Hey everybody, welcome to another action-packed, exciting episode of Scotty's Record Shop. On this particular edition, we're going to rank something that I wanted to do for a while, and I'm finally getting around to it. Ranking the studio albums of probably my favorite band, the Beatles. We're going to do, at least for this particular ranking, we're going to deal with the standardized catalog that's out, that's primarily UK, even though that's the stuff that I did not grow up with. I didn't grow up with the Beatles. Beatles for Sale, being in America, we grew up with Meet the Beatles and Beatles second album and Beatles 65, and eventually I'm going to rank all the Beatles albums from a US perspective, because it's a little different, at least for me. Uh, any hot takes in here? I think there might be one. There's one that I put kind of lower because it has one deadly flaw. And if you watch my channel regularly, you know one thing that I just don't like. And yeah, and if you don't know, you'll see. Uh, I think that's it. I think, I'm not going to give a history. Come on. You know the Beatles. Everybody knows the Beatles, right? And these are my opinions. And they're subject to change. I mean, I was looking at this list and I was like, there were a couple of albums where I should put this higher, but there's sentimental connections and stuff. So, anyway, let us know what you think down in the comments, because this is just my list. It doesn't mean really much of anything. You're probably, your marriage, your mileage may vary and probably will. All right, let's get into it, shall we? I think people put this at the bottom. For most people, put this at the bottom. I've tried and tried and tried to just make this a little higher, and I can't do it. We're talking about the soundtrack to Yellow Submarine, the original soundtrack, not the redone, remixed. That's much better. But and it's not, for me. It's not like the George Martin stuff on the second side. If you're talking about the album itself, it's not that. I mean, that's pleasant enough. It's just these songs were leftovers, and the Beatles didn't think very highly of them. The best thing on here for me is Hey Bulldog. I think that's an excellent song. But All Together Now, only a northern song. I mean, as much as I like George, yeah, just doesn't really work that much for me. But so that would be number 13. Lucky number 13 on my list. Least favorite, Yellow Submarine from 69. This next one is a good album. I think from this point on, they're all enjoyable, but things have to be in an order somewhere. This album gets a lot of crap, and I think it's unnecessary, or unwarranted. Um, it's the Beatles for Sale from late '64. I mean, the reality was is they were tired. They were out of songs. They were tired. 63 and 64 were insane years for them, and they had to go in and make another album. And people are like, look, see the pictures, look at that, they look tired, that's just, I don't know how true that is, really. They were tired, but I don't think they were like, we're going to purposely show the world that we're not really in it right now. There's still a lot of covers on this, more covers, but it's still a pretty good effort. you know Maybe there's a couple of duds on here, but overall it's a good listen. So at number 12 for me, the Beatles for Sale. Number 11, again, I like this album, but it's got to be placed somewhere, and it is kind of it is an album, but it's not an album. They just did a lot of recording, and Phil Spector went in and threw it all together, and what you get is Let It Be. Let It Be's good overall. It's good. I know that Paul doesn't like it, to the point where he went in and we got Let It Be Naked. I prefer this. I honestly I prefer this. I think partially because I'm used to it. You know what I mean? I grew up with this album, you know, and I'm used to the strings, and I'm used to to me, in my head, Long and Winding Road is a very dramatic song, and it needs a very dramatic. And I know it's not the way Paul intended it to be, but Paul was the one with the problem with Phil Spector. Nobody else had a problem with Phil Spector. Proof is that George went and used Phil Spector after. Of course, he had a problem with Phil after, when Phil kind of overdid it on All Things Must Pass, and John used him. So more than once. So obviously, a couple of the Beatles didn't mind what Phil Spector did. And to be honest with you, this was a dead project, and Phil Spector came in and cleaned it up and got it out for them, which was something they were not able to do. So I think, even though Phil was a fruitcake, a very dangerous fruitcake, by the way, he deserves some credit for at least getting this together, like it or love or not, But anyway, at number 11, I'm sorry, number 11, Let It Be. Next one. There's a song on here that I hate. I don't dislike, I hate. And that really, and this is a good album, but there are very few songs by the Beatles that are skippers for me, and this has always been one. Talking about With the Beatles, their second album. They were on a roll at this point in time. This is a great album if it wasn't for Little Child. That is just a cringeworthy. I just, one of my least favorite Beatles songs. Great. I mean, yeah, more covers, because everybody was doing covers on their albums to pad everything out. But the Beatles, unlike some other groups, like maybe the Kinks, some of their covers really weren't that good and really weighed down their early albums. The Beatles, at least they did these covers. They made them their own, and did pretty darn good with most of them, I think. This is considering, the chaos and the insanity that was Beatlemania at the beginning. It's amazing that they were able to put out something this good, and it was definitely a step up from their first album. It's at number 10 with the Beatles. Now, I just said it's a step up from the first album, so why did I put it above their second album? I just admire the energy that's in this. I get that they were brand new. They were still learning, in the studio. George Martin had more of a heavy hand on them, guiding them. But, I mean, the majority of this album was done in one day, which everybody knows that story. Most everybody knows the story. And I admire that. I admire that. I think that it's amazing. I think these guys had their crap together. I think that this album, as far as a live band, they had their crap together. They just went and pounded this out. And I think it's very admirable. And I think it did really, really good. And I'll tell you, when this first came out in America in 1987, when the first 4 albums came out, there's 2 of them, because they all came out in a batch. You buy them separately, but they all came out, the first 4 Beatles albums. And I went to pick them up, and I'm looking, I'm going, what the hell is this? I was, in my early 20s at the time, and I didn't know about these albums. So this was a shock to me. Sonically, it's a little weird, because, this was mixed for mono, and the CD that we got initially in America was not done well, the mono CD. The remasters, much better. But the stereo mix was a haphazard, let's throw it together, because stereo wasn't selling much. I mean, kids were buying mono albums. Still a really good listen, though. Very energetic. They were young and hungry, and I like that. So anyway, number 9. Number 9. I know, shut up. Please please me. Uh, Again, when this came out in the first batch as well. And I looked at it, I was like, what the hell? And different cover and different track listing. Where's all the instrumentals? Because I kind of like some of those instrumentals on these movie albums. We're talking about A Hard Day's Night, UK, which is now the standardized version, really. Like it or not, this is a great album. Great album. Considering, again, I'm going to say it again, but, you know, there was so much pressure on them to produce product, and they really, 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 really kicked it up. Yeah, there's, cover, and again, we there's some covers to pad everything out, but again, they make them their own, and this is a very enjoyable listen. It took some getting used to, though. When I do my U.S. ranking of the albums as I grew up with, I mean, I'll really get into it. But for now, this is number 8 for me. A Hard Day's Night soundtrack from 1964. Next one, a really big, for me, a quantum leap. There's a couple of places in the Beatle discography where you go, whoa, they have improved dramatically, songwriting, structure wise, and lyrical content even. This was the first one for me, really. The soundtrack to Help at the beginning of 1965. Who would have saw this coming, and how improved and dramatic after this, after the Tired album. But you get amazing songwriting on here, amazingly maturing. It wasn't where they were going to end up, but a quantum leap from where they were. Fantastic album. I won't call it a stupid movie, a silly movie. They were really starting to smoke a lot of weed at this particular point in time, and I'm not a proponent. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm not an advocate for smoking weed. Asked me 35 years ago, and I would have said yes, but it definitely changed these guys, and at this point in time, I think this is an improvement. Was it because of the pot? Or was it just because, they were listening to Dylan, especially John, and it just a quantum leap. So that's number 8, something like that. Let me see here. That was number 7, I believe. Okay, hot take. People put this one a lot higher. I respect that. It's one of the first Beatle albums I ever had. My first Beatle albums that I ever got was about 1970. I was like 4, 5 or something like that. And somebody gave me, and they were all beat to hell, in the Rubber Soul jacket, there was a copy of Rubber Soul, a copy of Revolver, and record 1, not 2, not both of them, but record 1 of the White Album. And that was my first exposure to the Beatles at like 5 years old. Now, why is this so low? You watch my channel all the time, you know what the deadly flaw is. What's wrong with this record, kids? It's a double album. And there's padding on here. Things that, again, you put this down to a single album, and you would have probably the best Beatle album ever. Damn close to it. I'm not going to pick on Revolution number 9 as much. I am going to... I don't listen to it, but I really sat down and tried to analyze what the hell was going through John's mind other than Heroin, um, and Yoko. But the reality is you can't look at Revolution Number Nine as a piece of music. It's not standard music, and there were other people at the time. This is not a brand new thing. Where the Lennons were the first people to do this. I look at it as like a sound collage, kind of just the only way I can describe it is like a sound collage. It's not music. It's a sound collage, and if you look at it in that way, maybe you can handle it a little better. Like I said, I don't. I'm glad that the last two songs, the two songs that were put on the end of this album, were put on the end of this album, because they're kind of skippers. You know, Ringo's song "Good Night" is serviceable. You know, but I don't usually listen to it. But I absolutely adore. I adore the first record because again, I all my life, 60 years old, 56 years now, something like that I've been going through this and hearing that. I mean, that was when I first heard record one of this. So near and dear to my heart, but unfortunately it's a double album, and I can't think of a double album that is perfect all the way through. At least a studio album. I'm sorry. If I discover one or something happens to me where I decide one is, you guys will be the first to know. Believe me, because it'll be a revelation to me too. But anyway, at number 1, 2, 3, number 6. Hope you're not paying attention to me counting, because I'm obviously not paying attention. Number 6, the White Album. Number 5, an album that we grew up with that people in the UK didn't, unless you were in the 80s. Is this a compilation? Some people are like, it's a compilation. It's part of the Beatles' regular canon, and I grew up with it. Talking about Magical Mystery Tour. Love this album. A couple things that people... Flying is okay. Blue Jay Way is okay. You know. One song on here that never gets talked about, it just goes under the radar all the time, which I just think is this quaint, lovely song by Paul, is Your Mother Should Know. Always love that song. And it, out of the, I am the walrus, hello, goodbye. I mean, all this stuff that's on here, Magical Mystery Tour, Fool on the Hill, played on the radio all the time. Even on the Beatles channel, you rarely hear Your Mother Should Know. And it's too bad, because it's a great, great, great song. And even though the movie, or the television special, as it were, was kind of weird and flopped, and it's just, the American, one of the great things that Capitol did for the Beatles. At number 5, Magical Mystery Tour. Next one. Next one. I'm still in my head going, do I really want to do this? But I'm just going with it. Some people consider this the best album of all time. Rolling Stone put it, blah, 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 blah. What needs to be said about this? And why the hell did he put it at number 4? I'm a little burned out on this. I think it's a fantastic album. Revolutionary. Deserves most of the credit that it gets, I think, as just a monumental masterpiece for its time. 1967. And I've had the chance, I was very young. I did not buy this in 1967. But I had a chance to talk to some people involved in radio and stuff at that time who, this just fried everybody's mind. That wasn't hype. That, nowadays we go back in time and we're like, Woodstock was the greatest loving festival. And if you talk to people who were at Woodstock, it was like, it sucked. It was terrible. It was wet. It was cold. You couldn't tell if it was mud or if it was poo that you were stepping in. right? And I've talked to several people at Woodstock, okay, who were there that I know, and they said that everybody's like, if you say that it was great, the odds are really good you weren't there. Just how it shows how time glorifies things. This is not, well, I mean, yeah, sure, to some extent, maybe this is time glorifies this a little more, but the people who were around back then who heard this, perhaps you were one of them. The odds are pretty good this fried your brain because there really wasn't anything like this at the time. So, at number 4 for me, from 1967, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Number 3, this is the one I'm having a hard time with. I want to put this higher, but there's some sentimental issues going on, and I still want to put this higher because it really is probably for me, their crowning achievement. I'm just going to do it. Abbey Road. I just, this is the shits, man, for them. This is probably the best sonically sounding album they put out. And it's just amazing what they did here. Considering how fractured and disjointed and at this point in time everybody was done. The Beatles were done, but they were going to do one more album, and boy, they put it together. Maybe my favorite album, really, but again, sentimentality kicks in. Okay, so let's at number 3, Abbey Road. That one hurts. Should be higher. I know. Number 2, Rubber Soul. This is a weird album because there are songs on here that, from my U.S. perspective, don't belong on here. Drive My Car. Stuff like that. The U.S. version of this, far better than this. But you can't deny what kind of another quantum leap from Help to this, writing-wise, the Beatles made. Just a great album. Now, people are like, George's, the sitar Norwegian Wood. First time ever sitar. Actually, I believe that the Kinks' See My Friend is the first song that actually, I think, again, at this point in time, I wasn't paying attention to the pop charts. But fantastic album. Even the cover art just screams cool to me. Just like, wow, this is they look so damn hip and so serious and probably so stoned. But anyway, my second favorite Beatles album, Rubber Soul. I gotta go with Revolver. I am a big fan of the U.S. Revolver. And that pisses, I don't want to say it pisses people off, but I everybody's like, well, they took all of John's best songs off here and it was more of a Paul album. Who cares? I know you do. Sorry to offend you. But I just really, again, for the first 15 years, 20 years of my life, 20 plus years of my life, the U.S. Revolver was the only one that I knew. And my brain got used to that. And so when you start putting Doc Roberts and stuff like that in here, although they're good songs, it messes it up for me a little bit. But for all of you who, think that it was a crime for those songs to be removed, you should be redeemed anyway, because this is my favorite album by them. It just is. Paul's writing was at a peak. It was just at its peak for me. you know. And there's so many different things. You've got Baroque kind of sounding songs. You've got, would I call it like proto kind of horn based soul music with Got to Get You Into My Life. I don't even know. I mean, yes, it's a pop song, but I mean, it inspired bands like Blood, Sweat, and Tears who did a cover of it. Obviously, Earth, Wind, and Fire killed it. They changed it, they funked it up a little bit more, but still, this song, even though it's a, you know, bunch of British dudes who weren't really soulful per se, see, they did a great job with this. And of course, Tomorrow Never Knows. When I was a kid, I mean, I'm talking 5 years old, when I first heard that song, I vividly remember that song coming on when I was listening to it with my little kitty record player. We wouldn't even call it a turntable. It had a nail, probably, as a needle, right? Had a freaking railroad spike. It was bad, right? Thankfully, these albums were in bad shape. That's why they were given to me. But it was like the first time I heard that, I was like, "Oh my god!" Because even in 1970, there was nothing like that. And of course, I was, you know, I was 5 years old or whatever, and so I wasn't privy to the psychedelic sounds of the 60s yet. I mean, I was listening to AM radio. That's all I listened to back then. The pop stuff of the times, and there was nothing like that. Tomorrow Never Knows was nothing like that. And to this day, it's like, wow, just such a insanely great song. Great album. All right, rambled on enough. Let us know what you think. Think I'm crazy? That's fine, 'cause probably am. Uh, like, subscribe, share. You know, even if you just put a thumbs up, how long does it take to just click thumbs up? That helps the algorithms. Again, I say this on every video. I am not trying to get rich or famous off of these. Believe me. Because it ain't happening. I'm doing this because I like to do this, you know. And I love talking about music to anybody who wants to listen. So thank you again, each and every one of you, for tuning into these silly things. And until next time, everybody, peace and love.